From the start of mankind, we had that magnificent invention, the bow. And we had fantastic people in our societies called bowyers. These beautiful people saw a stick and they thought, you know what? I'll have that and I'm going to put a string on it. But they didn't stop there. No. They found ways of shaping the bow and shaping wood, twisting wood, adding things, cutting things out, putting in bone and horn and laminate and fiberglass and carbon. Triple carbon bows exist. And then these revolutionaries added a wheel. Then they added two wheels to a bow, and then a lever action bow, all getting to the absolute pinnacle of archery. Slight bit of bias in there. Just a little bit. But this is where we are with archery today. This is the best that we can do. Before we get into the whole sci-fi flat space technology where it's just a grip and then everything pops out, as I often fantasize about. But while archery was evolving and flourishing, there was competition. Predominantly the crossbow. Now it's easy to understand why the crossbow was so popular and why it became so popular. It's much easier to handle a crossbow. It's easier to become more proficient as a crossbowman than it is to become an actual archer, and it takes a lot less physical strength to operate and to shoot a medieval crossbow than it does to shoot a medieval wartime bow, because you can have cranks and everything else along with it. Obviously not with this one. You don't need it. Yeah. No. Smart people also came up with firearms, more or less making archery redundant. More of a pastime, Olympic hobbies, as well as crossbow in most situations. But is a firearm the best? Or is there still a place for archery in the modern world? Disclaimer. I'm not a firearms expert. I'm not a munitions expert. Hell, I struggle saying the word clearly. But I am a fan of most firearms, and I have an opinion. So here it is. What works best really depends in what kind of situation. So to start this one off, let's say you're in the middle of a forest. Why? Maybe you had too much to drink last night. I'm not judging, we've all been there, but if you're waking up in the middle of the forest, you kind of really need to reassess things. Or you were abducted by 6-hand aliens and they plopped you in the forest as you were. Yeah, we'll go with that. Middle of the forest, you don't know where you are. What can you make? Well, you can't make a gun, and you can't really make an effective crossbow because, well, the smaller the crossbow is, the more poundage you need to be able to put into it, and it's not really going to work. But you can make a bow. Yes, see, already a little bit biased because archery has a point over the others. This bow is not going to be anything amazing, but you've got two main ways of making a survival bow. Either you can get one big bit of wood that looks fairly sturdy, find a rock or something like that to chip away and shape it, or you can go really basic and grab a load of sticks together, lash them using vines, leaves, whatever you can find, and you have a makeshift bow right there. Again, it's not gonna win you any tournaments, but for survival purposes, well, you've got a bow. So you can't really make a gun, you can't really make a crossbow, so you can't really make ammo for either of them either. Because, I mean, realistically, to make a bullet, you need machinery, and to make a crossbow bolt seems a bit pointless really if you can only make a bow. But you can make an arrow. Again, probably won't win you any awards, but you could just get a stick, cut into it a little bit, you could file off the edge into a nice little point which will penetrate. And as far as fletchlings go, almost hit myself in the face there, but as far as fletchlings go, you don't really need feathers. I mean, back in the old days before I started to really appreciate a fine arrow, I had a friend made up some arrows for me that had cardboard for veins, and another few arrows had black masking tape, and they flew relatively well. I mean, again, you're not going to win any awards, but you would have it for defensive purposes when them six-handed alien rascals came back. You'd be prepared. Okay, so let's assume that you weren't dropped off, you weren't drinking too much, and the six-handed alien people they didn't abduct you, but you're going in to liberate people because you can't trust an alien with 6 hands. Yes. What would you take? Would you choose a bow in a forest situation? Would you choose a crossbow or a firearm? Now, the contenders for firearms: pump action shotgun and a handgun. By the way, both of these were from BB Guns for Less, something like that, from the mystery box, in fact. And I did do a video of opening said mystery box, as I genuinely didn't know what was going to happen, what I was going to get in the box. But yeah, even though I pressed record, it decided to stop recording about 10 seconds into the video. So that never made it. Maybe I'll do a separate one later. Anyway, these are the firearm contenders. In the crossbow, and you've seen the bow. The best bow. The absolute best we can make. There is my biasm again. But no, this bow would probably be one of the best ones you could take into that situation because it's fairly quiet. I mean, bows themselves aren't quiet. There's a lovely little myth in games and in films and everything else where bows are silent. They're silent weapons. No, sorry, that's not true. I mean, you still have that sound of the string going back to where it wants to be. You still have the sound of the limbs resetting, and you have the sound of the arrow. Depending on what kind of arrow you use, that could be noisy. But then it's the exact same with the crossbow. So, where would the bow leave you? Well, first off, you'd have to be an amazing shot. That's assuming for this that you wouldn't have sights or a stabilizer on, but you're a pretty damn decent shot anyway. The bow's slow. I mean, it takes a few seconds to get one arrow on and then to draw and to nock another arrow, depending on where you have your quiver. Doing a lot of hand motions here because in my head I've got quivers all over the place. Also, the bow's not a one hit, one kill kind of weapon. It's yeah. Now, in medieval warfare, the bow wasn't really the destructive force that we kind of think that it was. I mean, generally in mass warfare, the archer was an annoyance, a nuisance, and something you used to slow down the enemy. I mean, yeah, okay, if you got hit by an arrow, it was problematic, but it was more problematic because you were probably going to die of an infection a few days later rather than, just... Now, the crossbow is on a similar playing field to the bow in this situation when you're in a forest because, okay, it's much, much easier to aim with a crossbow, especially a crossbow, maybe a proper version of this where you have the iron sights on it. It makes it so much easier to aim. But it's still one hit, it's still quite slow, and your aim would have to be perfect. It would be a lot easier than shooting with the bow, yeah, but there are still issues. And certainly for a full frontal assault, nah. But in the forest, if you're going to have a full frontal assault, yeah. Okay, so for our two contenders for the firearms, a shotgun really is close quarters. It can do a lot of damage. It's a lot easier to aim. You don't really need to aim with a shotgun, just kind of point it in the right direction. It's big, it's bulky. If you run out of ammo, you can whack them with it. You can't whack someone with a bow. I mean, I know in shows like Arrow and the Avengers, they use the bow as a melee weapon, but it's not what it's designed to do. You can't really just, I mean, no. Okay, I suppose you could tie in a little grip handguard there, like a impromptu knuckle duster, maybe with a blade, but then you're still putting force. It's not what the bow is designed to do, and you're more likely to mess up the bow doing that than you are to actually make it worthwhile. You're probably better off just learning some kind of hand-to-hand. Or balanced on a chair. I'm okay with that. Or carrying a knife. Medieval archers used to carry a bollock knife. I promise you that's actually what it's called. It was yay big. About yay big. Not necessarily sharp, didn't have to be sharp. It was more of the shape than anything else. And the archer would just go through the field with people on the ground. And then the bollock knife. Yeah, that's what it was for. And I'm sure by the name you can kind of guess where one of the key areas you would use that knife on was. Yeah. But anyway, a gun. Both guns, in fact. You can pistol whip someone and the majority of guns will still operate just fine. And in terms of a handgun, much better range than a shotgun, much stabler. Yeah, full frontal assault in the forest. This one kind of goes to the guns. But what if you're going through the forest and you're trying to be sneaky, either to evade or to sneak past or whatever? Well, these examples of guns, no, because they'd be very loud. Very, very loud. Bows and crossbows aren't quiet, but they're a lot quieter than a firearm. Yeah. So, to be quiet, to be sneaky, would it be the bow or would it be the crossbow? I mean, I love bows, I love archery, and I think I'm a way better archer than I actually am. It pains me to say it, but I'd go with the crossbow. I can feel the hate coming off the bow. It's weird. Why the crossbow? Well, it's compact. It is really compact. I mean, the Oneida isn't exactly a longbow, but still, this is much easier to move around than it would be an actual bow. And if you're going to have unsettled ground, you're going to have trees everywhere, it's a better option than a bow. Plus, bolts are smaller than arrows, so in theory, you could have more bolts or less cumbersome and being able to move around a lot more easier. In terms of noise, it's more or less the same as an actual bow. So you could get your MSG on and it wouldn't really be that much of an issue. Okay, so far it's a point each. I mean, if you're going to be dropped into the middle of a forest, you could make a bow, which gives a point to archery. If you're going to have a full frontal assault, it's better to have a firearm. You don't need to be sneaky. So guns win in that one. And if you're trying to evade, probably best to have a crossbow if the only options are a handgun and a shotgun. Doesn't really help because there isn't a clear decisive winner. But situation does count for a lot. Combat archery is specialist. Deciding factor. What could you use in all situations? Well, you couldn't make a gun or a crossbow if you were just plopped down. But if you found them and you still had to evade, I don't know, I'd probably say crossbow. Yeah. I'd go with crossbow, and it breaks my archer's heart. Yeah. Okay, part 1 done. Crossbows at the moment have a lead. But that was just my opinion. What do you think? What do you reckon? Would you choose the bow? Would you choose the gun? Would you choose the shotgun? Let me know down below. Like the shirt? Well, you can get one just like it by following the link in the description box down below. Alternatively, you can go onto Facebook and search for the shop Telrin. Not only can you pick up some cool shirts and some cool hoodies, but you're also helping me to completely dominate the world. Or, you know, fund the channel. Either way.